When the 2004 Boxing Day tsunami hit the Indian Ocean, entire cities vanished overnight. But one isolated tribe, living with no electricity, no internet, and weapons carved from bone, somehow survived. When a rescue helicopter flew overhead, the survivors didn't wait for help. They fired arrows. 2 years later, another helicopter was attacked. And then, India quietly sealed the island off forever. How did they know the tsunami was coming? Why did the government cover up what happened next? And how has this tribe managed to stay in the Stone Age while the rest of us evolved? Hey guys, welcome back to part 3 on our series on the uncontacted tribe of North Sentinel Island, the Sentinelese. In today's video, we're revisiting the 2 key moments from their story. So we want to go back and tell again the 2004 tsunami and the 2006 fisherman incident. If you haven't seen part 2, go ahead and watch that right now, but this one I will touch on that briefly so we're caught up to speed, because I want to dig a little bit deeper, because I found some new details, ones that make these events even stranger than what I had before. So before we get into it, please take a second to like, comment, subscribe. A lot of you who are watching aren't subscribed, and it really helps the video to more people when you hit that subscribe button, so thank you in advance. Now, let's get into it. So on December 26, 2004, the earth shook. A 9.1 magnitude earthquake ripped through the Indian Ocean, unleashing one of the deadliest tsunamis in recorded history. In just a few hours, walls of water tore across coastlines from Indonesia to Sri Lanka, from Thailand to India. Entire villages were erased, cities flooded, families torn apart. By the end, more than 230,000 lives were lost across 14 countries. The images and videos are seared into memory, and it was the first time that we had recorded footage of what some of these tsunamis look like. There were water rushing through the streets, cars tossed like toys, whole neighborhoods swallowed in seconds. It was the first documented tsunami, and it gives you straight chills when you watch the massive wave hit the coastline. And the survivors? They described it as the end of the world. Some remembered the sound like 1,000 jet engines. Others spoke of the sea pulling away, leaving fish flopping on bare sand, moments before the ocean roared back with unstoppable force. But while the world grieved, another question was asked. What about the most isolated people on Earth, the Sentinelese? Because in the middle of the Bay of Bengal, directly in the path of the tsunami, is North Sentinel Island, the tiny strip of land home to the Sentinelese, a tribe with no warning systems, no technology, no contact with the outside world. Could they have survived the same force that obliterated modern cities? The answer shocked everyone. So while skyscrapers crumbled and villages vanished, the Sentinelese endured. But how? No early warning sirens, no phone calls, no government orders to evacuate. Only instinct, sharpened over thousands of years. When the tides shifted unnaturally and the birds fled inland, did they understand what was coming? Did they move into the forest away from the coast? And when the waves struck, there are so many unanswered questions. But what likely saved the Sentinelese can be explained by looking at other isolated communities in the region. In a video from the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, a man explained what he had learned from the people of Simeulue Island in Indonesia, a kind of similar tribe. Their survival, he said, came from oral history passed down through generations, stories warning that when the sea suddenly pulls back, a great wave always follows. That memory saved an entire community in Indonesia, and it may have saved the Sentinelese too. Days later, an Indian helicopter swept low over the island, searching for survivors. What it found was not devastation, but defiance. A local Sentinelese man, bow in hand, arrow drawn, firing at the machine above. The message was unmistakable. We survived, and we don't need to be rescued. The image on the internet is chilling, but a magnificent sign at the resilience of the Sentinelese. So if you're digging through the internet, you can find the before and after satellite images, which I found here to show you guys, which confirm this. The island had been hit just like everywhere else. The beaches gleamed brighter, stripped bare by the tsunami's force. But unlike the rest of the world, the people of North Sentinel walked away unbroken, most likely. So the tsunami proved the Sentinelese could survive nature's fury. But 2 years later, another challenge came. Not from the sea, but from men who refused to respect its warnings. And what happened to them would become one of the most chilling messages the island has ever sent to the modern world. So it was January 2006, two fishermen slipped into the forbidden waters near North Sentinel Island. They were looking for profit, crabs and fish from the uncharted. At night while they slept, their small boat drifted silently onto the reef. By morning, they were in Sentinelese territory. What happened next would make headlines across India. And if it seems like I'm repeating myself, there are more details I was able to uncover to share here. The men were killed swiftly, but it was how their bodies were treated that shocked even officials. Rumors say the fishermen were propped upright, tied with bamboo poles, their corpses displayed on beach like crucifixes. These were the rumors that were being shared, facing outward toward the sea, kind of like a warning. Human scarecrows. But these were just rumors. So the Indian government sent the Coast Guard to investigate and find and recover the bodies. Commandant Pravin Gaur of the Indian Coast Guard had one mission: retrieve the bodies of the two fishermen who had been killed after their boat drifted onto North Sentinel Island. To Commander Gaur, it was supposed to be a routine. He had a helicopter, a trained crew, and the authority of a nation behind him. The Sentinelese, he thought, were no match for modern tactics. But as his chopper descended over the island, the sky erupted with arrows and spears. I was able to find an interview where he tells it in detail, which I will snippet some of the interview here.
I noticed that there was two sand heaps, and one of my aircrew diver who was very fast enough to dig out those graves and find out that the bodies were lying inside the graves. But to take out the bodies, it takes time, because they were bare hand, they were making the bodies come out of the sand. It was a difficult task. And these people, tribesmen, they were again running back towards the helicopter.
The Sentinelese had emerged from the tree line moving fast, attacking from all angles. Gaur was forced to pull away. He decided to outmaneuver them, flying nearly 1.5 kilometers down the coast. He tried to bait the tribesmen to chase the helicopter. Then he swung back fast, landing to the site where the two fishermen's bodies were buried. His crew leapt out, digging through the sand with their bare hands. When they found the bodies, they made a grim discovery. Both men had been strangled and tied up in rope, their corpses half buried as if a warning. But before the crew could lift them out, the Sentinelese returned, sprinting, shouting, bows raised. This is where the commander makes a shocking statement that clarified how big the tribe was on the island. You've heard people say that there may be only a dozen to maybe 50 left. The commander, in his own words, said there was anywhere from 100 to 200 Sentinelese charging at them.
More than maybe 50 to 200, because you cannot count in such a situation where you are running.
It was very hard for him to count because they were literally under attack, so your body and your mind are going through a lot of things. But there was a lot. Arrows clattered off the fuselage as the helicopter took off under fire. Spears flew through the air, barely missing the rotors. Commander Gaur tried again days later and failed again. The bodies remain on the island to this day, but most likely claimed by the tide. And they're protected by the people who buried them. The world saw savagery, but what if this was sovereignty? The Sentinelese weren't killing for blood, they were defending their home, their history, their survival, as we learned what happened when Portman went to them in 1771. And in doing so, they exposed a truth most of the world refuses to see. Maybe we're the ones who never learn when to leave something alone. But the attacks didn't stop the outside world, they only made the mystery deeper. Soon, satellites, drones, and online conspiracy theories would turn this tiny island into a global obsession. And the stories people told were often far from the truth. The fewer facts the world knows, the wilder the stories become. And for the Sentinelese, who speak no known language, especially to the surrounding Andaman tribes that they can understand, they have never really shared their truth. Internet forums, headlines, and conspiracy channels all ask the same question: what are they hiding? In the decades after the killings, North Sentinel became less a real place and more a digital myth, with YouTubers trying to explore it and even missionaries, which I will get to. Newspapers call them the world's last cannibals. Documentaries describe them as Stone Age warriors frozen in time. On Reddit and YouTube, millions debated whether the Indian government was hiding something on the island. Possibly secret experiments, buried treasure, or even the most outlandish alien contact. but none of it seems to be really true. There has never been evidence of any cannibalism or of any of the supernatural secrets. Those stories come from the 19th century colonial fears, where the British sailors who saw bodies on beaches and assumed ritual sacrifice, and from there was passed down. In reality, the Sentinelese were simply defending their dead, the same way any people would. Even India's secrecy added fuel. After 1996, the government made it illegal to come within 3 miles of the island to protect the tribe from disease, allegedly. They built a legal wall of silence, but online, that silence looks suspicious, and it still does, especially after the successful encounter in 1991 twice. You would wonder, why didn't they continue? But then you start to think, what would be the point? Integrate, learn about them? It's pretty clear these people just want to be left alone. The satellite photos, leaked drone clips, and even blurry tourist images were analyzed frame by frame, as if decoding some sort of mystery. The truth, every forbidden image was taken from the outside the exclusion zone. And what they showed wasn't monsters or military cover-ups, just people fishing, cooking, and living. The Sentinelese didn't become a myth on their own. We made them one. Every rumor, every viral headline, every forbidden image was really about us, our obsession with the last thing we can't control, can't film, can't fully understand. But strip away the rumors and what's left is even something more fascinating. A community that's thrived for thousands of years without cities, without power, without help. So how do they do it? To understand that, you have to see how they live day to day, hand to mouth, in perfect rhythm with their island. So we've built cities to survive, they build none, yet they've outlived every empire that had ever tried to touch them. For nearly 60,000 years, they say, they've been living while the rest of humanity raced forward. The Sentinelese stayed exactly where they began, with maybe minor developments. The question is, how do they keep surviving when the entire world around them keeps collapsing or changing? Your mind wanders to great floods or cataclysms that took place, and they've been able to withstand all of it. If they've been around as long as researchers have stated, that is still up for debate. To the Sentinelese, survival isn't strategy, it's instinct. So we take the research of surrounding tribes and early hunter-gatherers to generalize how these people have survived. And to give you a sense, this is what it looks like. At dawn, men head into the jungle with bows and spears, hunting wild pigs and monitor lizards. Women and children forage for roots, berries, and honey. They wade through the shallows, fishing with spears, striking turtles and reef fish with uncanny precision, as we saw in the 1974 footage when they hit the boat. Their island is small, but it gives everything: coconut palms, fruit trees, birds, pigs, fish, fresh water from hidden streams, all within a day's walk. Nothing is wasted and nothing is hoarded. Their homes are open-air huts woven from leaves and branches. Simple, yes, but designed for the island's rhythm. They stand cool in the tropical heat, and when the monsoon winds tear through, the huts collapse safely instead of crushing the people inside. This is what these local tribes have learned. And within hours, they can rebuild them from the forest around. Very brilliant tactics. And then there's fire, their oldest companion, which we can confirm since the first ever sighting by the British survey ship Diligent in 1771, where they noted in the ship's logbooks of smoke coming from the island. They believe they have kept a single flame burning for generations. That's a rumor. They said protecting embers in clay pots through every storm. Others think they learned to spark it on their own. No one knows for sure, but each time an aerial photo catches the orange glow of a campfire, it's proof the flame is still alive and has been passed down. From above, the island looks quiet. We have aerial footage from airplanes that fly over, but every sound, the crash of waves, the hum of insects, the cry of birds, is part of their system. They read the weather through the trees, the tides through the reef, and time itself through the light that filters down from the canopy. They don't need maps or clocks or data. They have rhythm. Being able to understand how they know these instinctual qualities, which teaches so-called modernized people skills we've lost over time. Primitive? Hardly. What looks simple to us is mastery to them in an equilibrium so perfect that it survived earthquakes, tsunamis, and empires. The Sentinelese don't fight nature. They move with it. They live not apart from the world, but in tune with it. And that's why they're still here. But survival takes more than skill, it takes defense. And on North Sentinel Island, every tool, every weapon, every piece of scavenged metal tells the story of how a so-called primitive tribe became the most untouchable, uncontacted people on Earth. So they don't have factories, no armies, no machines, yet for centuries, they've defended their island against everything, from storms to soldiers. Their secret isn't strength in numbers, it's more of a master of simplicity. Every bow, every arrow, every shard of iron tells a story of how the Sentinelese turned survival into an art form. Based on reports from attempted visits to neighboring tribes, we can conclude with a pretty high level of confidence a few things. The bow is the heart of their power, nearly 6 feet tall, taller than the men who wield it. Carved from the island's most flexible woods, strung tight with plant fiber, and drawn with the kind of precision only years of hunting can teach. And the arrows aren't all the same. Each one has a purpose. Flat-tipped arrows slice through the shallow water to spear fish. Long, fire-hardened shafts bring down wild pigs and sea turtles. And the most feared of all, the iron-tipped arrows, scavenged from shipwrecks like the MV Russley and the MV Primrose, which you can see on Google Maps. So they forge nothing, yet recycle everything. When waves deliver wreckage to their shores, they hammer metal into tools and weapons using rocks as anvils. A rusty nail becomes an arrowhead probably, and a steel plate becomes a spear tip. To the Sentinelese, even the debris of a fallen world has purpose. However, if it's a gift, it'll be buried in the sand and left to be forgotten, as we've seen before. Their spears are equally versatile, long and balanced, perfect for fishing on reefs or guarding the tree line. Observers have seen them waiting silently in the surf, the sunlight flashing off wet skin and sharpened tips, striking with deadly accuracy when a shadow passes beneath the water. Some internet savants have studied Google Map footage over the years and have theorized a few things, which is interesting. They have theorized that they have found walkways and little huts on the shoreline to hunt and fish for food. And one thing we include for sure is they don't fight alone. When threatened, they coordinate, loosing arrows in volleys, covering one another's flanks, disappearing into the trees, and re-emerging from unexpected angles. These aren't chaotic attacks. They're tactics refined through generations of defending a single home. The Sentinelese have proven that technology doesn't have to look advanced to be unstoppable in many ways. It only has to work in harmony with its world. But survival isn't just written in weapons, it's spoken, or rather, left unspoken. Because on North Sentinel Island, there's one thing more mysterious than their tools: their words. It is a language literally no one on Earth can understand, and one that might vanish forever if the world ever forces them to speak it. So you can't conquer what you can't communicate with, and for the Sentinelese, their silence is their strongest weapon. They don't speak our words, they don't understand our languages, and yet their silence has spoken louder than any message the modern world would ever send. In 1969, anthropologist Dr. Triloknath Pandit set out to make contact with the Sentinelese, as we explained in part 1. He brought with him interpreters from the nearby Onge tribe, hoping their shared ancestry might build a bridge. But the moment the Onge called out toward the beach, the Sentinelese answered not with words, but with arrows. The languages were completely foreign to one another. There was no recognition, no response, only the ancient warning that still echoes today: stay away. Linguists later realized just how deep that divide runs. The Sentinelese language is believed to have split off from other enemies' tongues tens of thousands of years ago, long before kingdoms, empires, or even agriculture. No one outside the island has ever heard a full sentence, let alone recorded one. And with no written form, it exists only as a sound, passed from mouth to ear, generation to generation, completely untouched by the modern world. Every word, every song, every story they tell around their fires carries history that no outsider will ever decode. When their language dies, an entire timeline of human existence vanishes with it. For the Sentinelese, language isn't a tool, it's a boundary, a way of saying we don't need you to understand us to survive. But silence can only last so long, because in 2018, one man would cross that line, not by accident, but by his faith. He believed he was on a mission from God, and when he stepped onto the sands of North Sentinel Island, the modern world came crashing back into theirs. Thank you for watching part 3. If you haven't already, please like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure you check out the previous videos to get a full understanding of the Sentinelese, but get ready because the next part is probably the most documented and wildest story from North Sentinel Island in the 21st century. So until then, stay tuned and I will see you in the next one.